Countdown to blast off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Lord Blood-Rah's Wrackin Theater. Lord Blood-Rah, good! Welcome.
Oh, my lords and ladies, geeks, geekerellas, geekulas, and geekeritas. I am Lord Blood-Rah, and this is Lord Blood-Rah's Wrackin Theater. And here we are in the most magnificent time of the year, Halloween. And you know how I know it's Halloween? Because all the stores are already putting out their Christmas decorations. I mean, holy Lugosi, I haven't even handed out one piece of Halloween candy yet. I should not be seeing Christmas cookies in Rite Aid. Anyway, my lords and ladies, we know what time of year it is, and we know how best to celebrate it, with all the horror we can take in. Ha ha! Which brings me to tonight's special presentation, because tonight I present to you a look back at the roots of cinematic horror. Ha ha! Tonight, from 1983, is the rarely seen horror retrospective, The Horror of It All. Ha ha! So grab that pumpkin ale, a big bowl of Halloween candy, and let's dive into this documentary from those chilling purveyors of terror, the Pennsylvania Public Library's Film Center of the State Library of Pennsylvania. Here is The Horror of It All.
Darkness, the breeding ground of horror, where fiends not of this earth appear. Moments of terror, and how we relish them. A haunted mansion where actors, papier-mâché, and paint speak a language we know well, the language of horror. We learned it from superstitions, tales, comic books, but most of all, we learned it in those other halls of darkness, the movie theaters of yesteryear. Desperate heroes, beautiful heroines, villains, monsters. Always they were there to provide us with our beloved moments of terror. Grotesque images torn out of our own dark, our own earliest nightmares. Try as we may, we are never quite able to leave them behind. And that's the horror of it all. It seems we are forever drawn toward what we fear. Young or old, we are tempted to go inside the darkness, to come out on another side, a temptation for which we have always been willing to pay.
We grow up with a certain hunger, not only for the bright things in life, but for things that are fearful and terrifying.
The filmmaker puts something on the screen, and each individual member of the audience adds something unto themselves to complete the process.
You know, if you wonder why the continual preoccupation with horror in motion pictures, there's a reason. People love to be scared.
The great horror movies of bygone days are like extensions of nightmares, past and present. A secret word in the 1920 film, The Golem, gives magic power to a sage. So taken was Paul Wegener with the legend of an inanimate figure who becomes a champion against oppression that he 3 times turned it into film. Wegener's own impressive size enabled him to play the giant clay statue brought to life. The Golem set a pattern, defying the laws of God and man, even with good intentions, inevitably led to disaster. We learned, too, that beautiful women would never be safe with monsters. Also, in horror films, leading men are invariably ineffectual against monsters. In The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, also produced in Germany in 1920, horror took on a uniquely subjective cast. A sinister figure, Caligari reveals his strange powers over a sleepwalker. Seeking to project the world of a psychotic, this film uses painted flats to create a threatening and surreal environment as Cesare, the somnambulist, goes forth to commit the murders commanded by his master. This scene was so unsettling that it helped make The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari one of the most discussed films of the 20s. An abiding dread that would be aroused repeatedly in horror films of the future, being attacked when we are most vulnerable, while we sleep. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari catapulted Conrad Veidt to world attention, and it bore home the axiom horror films would repeat: our monsters were invariably very human and vulnerable to beauty. One of horror's most reliable staples, guaranteed to produce dread in any audience, the story of the vampire. In 1922, moviegoers were mesmerized by the German-made Nosferatu, an early working of the Bram Stoker novel Dracula. This was no simple creature made from clay, no sleeping figure locked in a trance. This was the undead, a monster who retreated by day to his coffin, but who roamed by night to feed on human blood. In director Fritz Lang's Metropolis, a fantasy and horror film also from Germany, the heroine is trapped in the very world of the dead, the dark catacombs of a city in a far distant future. As always, the heroine's cries bring no rescue. Her villainous pursuer, the arch-heavy of the horror film, the mad scientist. A A scene that would echo and re-echo in horror films to come. The laboratory where a scientist dares imitate God as he transfers the very soul of a human being to give life to his robot creation.
There we saw the great actor John Carradine, B-movie master Roger Corman, and director Ruben Mamoulian, who directed the 1931 version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde starring Frederick March, who won a Best Actor Oscar for his performance as the good doctor and the bad miscreant in that film. Stay tuned. More familiar faces and familiar chills coming up. Do you love horror, science fiction, B-movies, horror hosts, old-time radio, just plain spooky stuff? Then you should sign up at patreon.com/Lord Blood-Rah. You'll be supporting the production of Lord Blood-Rah's Wrackin Theater, presenting the best, worst, and wildest horror films ever made. Lord Blood-Rah's Wrackin Auditorium, featuring the best of old-time radio horror. Captain Paxar's Star Cadet Hour, showing classic 1950s sci-fi shows for Star Cadets of all ages. Plus, you'll get exclusive access to bonus content like Behind the Curtains of the Wrackin Auditorium, a deep dive into radio horror. Lord Blood-Rah's B-movie reviews, a look at a classic low-budget drive-in feature, and much more. Sign up today at patreon.com/Lord Blood-Rah for the love of horror.
The poet, the figure model who loves to show it.
You suppose he could be physically attracted to her? No, man, he ain't the type. You don't get enough vitamin E.
All these are beat. All these you'll meet in A Bucket of Blood.
Let us make the scene. Crazy.
Enjoy yourself. Where the hilarious enjoy the horrifying. In A Bucket of Blood.
No, you're gonna shoot me! Don't shoot!
Come to the land of living dreams, where realists dream of the unreal.
Walter, you've done something to me. Something deep down inside of my prana. Oh, Walter, I want to be with you. You're creative.
Beatniks at their bawdiest. The creative urge at its most primitive. I'm deeply moved, and I shall compose a poem. Love is art. Art is love. It's the weirdest and the wildest.
I don't want to make statues anymore. I want to get married. To you.
Now back to the horror of it all, where we've had a look at early European horror, and now we see what terrors filled the American movie houses of the 1920s.
European horror films emphasized the supernatural. But in the United States, horror had a more realistic base. In 1920, a prohibition-conscious audience readily accepted that in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, even a single drink could lead to terrible consequences. John Barrymore's performance made that possibility chillingly believable.
He understood Stevenson's play. Stevenson mentioned that he was the personification of evil, but it was the evil of his expression, and it was not achieved by Barrymore with makeup. You know, the leading men are not remembered by the public. It's the heavies that are remembered, because they're the characters in plays and in motion pictures who are the active ones. The leading men are acted upon, but the heavies, the villains, are the ones who do things. That's why the great actors of, ever since Betterton, have preferred to play the heavies. Lou Tellegen was a leading manager of Sally Bernhardt for many years. He came to the States, and I got to know him because we were both sculptors. He was an extremely handsome man with a magnificent physique, walked like a panther, had a cold gray eye that you could see a mile away. And he once said to me, "I love my men of sin."
Lon Chaney, one of the great actors of silent films, gave his men of sin 1,000 faces, each more fear-inspiring than the next. Chaney's pride was that he not only performed his own stunts, he also created and applied his often spectacular makeup. One of his greatest films, made in 1925, The Phantom of the Opera.
The important element is that much of it takes place in the semi-darkness of catacombs. In a way, the Paris Opera House is a symbol of the unconscious mind in which dwells monstrous desire, and this struck a resonant chord in many of the masculine members of the audience. Chaney's performance, because he spent much of the time wearing a mask, was a matter of ballet. He was a master, a consummate master of pantomime. Phantom of the Opera didn't have any overt supernatural implications, but we had a man who slept in a coffin, who lived in catacombs 5 levels below the Paris Opera House, and who masked himself to disguise a hideous face. And in a way, he pressed the buttons of an audience that at that time was very unaware of the sexual symbolism involved, but it registered nonetheless, because in effect, the character of Chaney, as portrayed in The Phantom of the Opera, was that of a man who is ashamed or afraid of his own sexuality, who conceals his monstrous desire, as it was termed in those days, under a mask. When it is revealed, the heroine recoils in fright from a kindly, gentle man who is now revealed as a hideous being. The unique quality of the silent film in America was that it did not deal with supernatural topics per se. Actually, evil was personified by the ugly and the deformed, as in the case of Lon Chaney and other actors, and it took place usually in an atmosphere of darkness. We knew, of course, that handsome people were almost invariably good, and that deformed, elderly, unfortunate people were bad. This we had learned in our fairy tales as children. Now we were seeing those fairy tales in darkness up there on the screen, without benefit of Freudian psychology, without benefit of special effects. The important thing is we believed what we saw, and it frightened the living blazes out of us.
A 1927 American film that did frighten the blazes out of audiences, The Cat and the Canary. The dark, haunted mansion where terror could lurk in every corner became part of the growing language of horror. It was where anything could happen, and often did. Again, the leading man proved undependable. But at least in this film, he provided comic relief. A classic moment of horror and the source of countless nightmares. In 1931, Svengali, starring John Barrymore, was released. Sound had arrived, increasing immeasurably the ways films could influence the emotions of audiences. Svengali's true impact came from the unsettling demonstration of mind control from afar. Here was no mad scientist intent on creating life. This villain is able to take a life over.
Gentlemen, it might be as well to remember there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
These mysteries became a challenge for a new generation of filmmakers.
Mr. Zucker, the head of Paramount, called me up and asked me if I would like to do a film of the famous Stevenson story, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I saw the story as a conflict not between good and evil, as it used to be done before, where Jekyll becomes an evil person, a monster. But I saw the story more as a conflict between the high aspiration of every human being and his lower, baser instincts. And that the whole idea was to have a young man, very handsome, whose whole intention is to free himself from all the evil impulses, all the animal impulses, really, not evil, animal. And the idea with Frederick March was that when he becomes Hyde, he does not become a monster, but he becomes our common ancestor, the Neanderthal man. And Frederick March gave a beautiful performance and wound up by winning the Academy Award.
Free at last.
It was the same year, 1931. One of the films designed to meet a public appetite for movies that scared was The Bat Whispers. There was the reliable old mansion at night. This time the menace casting shadows, a bat in human form, shades of terror to come. Outside, the reliable thunderstorm. And inside, a heroine who naturally insists on going where no one in her right mind would even dream of going, through the ever-present secret door. One essential sound of the horror film, the scream of the terrorized heroine, was yet to be heard. In the tradition of the mystery horror film, the villain is eventually unmasked.
There'll be no getaway this time.
You think you've got me, eh? Well, let me tell you this. There never was a jail built strong enough to hold the bat. And after I have paid my respects to your cheap lockup, I shall return at night. The bat always flies at night. And always in a straight line.
The bat, enacted by Chester Morris, never did manage to return.
Horrors of Spider Island.
8 beautiful girls and 1 lone man struggling for survival, with death, sudden, violent, and horrible, lurking in the shadows.
Horrors of Spider Island.
Out of the night came a fate worse than death. A man's mind twisted, his brain poisoned, with an uncontrollable lust to kill.
Horrors of Spider Island.
A tale of terror that will leave you limp. So hideous and shocking, you won't believe your eyes. His hunger for victims was never satisfied. Prepare to be frightened out of your wits by the
Horrors of Spider Island.
As we return to the horror of it all, we just saw a few scenes from the 1931 film The Bat Whispers, which, I am happy to say, I will be hosting in the upcoming season of the Wrackin Theater. But now, we turn to the most famous bat in the realm of horror, and the film which launched an entire horror revolution.
But in the same year, another kind of bat descended on the movie-going public with the release of Dracula. Bats, wolves, and vampires became honorary members in horrordom's Hall of Fame, as did Dracula's star, Bela Lugosi. After this one production, the supernatural would become an enduring element of the American horror film. Also in 1931, another movie was destined to become a classic, creating a new horror star, Boris Karloff. The film was Frankenstein, based on the early 19th century novel by Mary Shelley. Yet again, a scientist dares attempt to create a life. The result? A monster who would eventually turn on his creator. Never before, and perhaps never again, would the elements for producing terror in an audience seem so perfectly fused.
It's very interesting to compare these two films that were made almost at the same time in the early 30s, in that they both dealt with the theme of death. Dracula with an undead creature brought back to life, living off of the blood of the living, and the Frankenstein monster, a creature made from parts of dead bodies, and perhaps doubly terrifying for that reason. When I was much younger, I knew the late James Whale, and he told me a fascinating anecdote about the first sneak preview of Frankenstein, which was held in Santa Barbara. While he was sleeping in the middle of the night, he was awakened with a phone call, and a voice came on the line saying, "Are you the director of that film that was previewed tonight?" And he said yes. And the voice said, "Well, I can't sleep, and I'll be damned if I'll let you sleep." And James found this story to be very amusing. And it was a characteristic of his horror films particularly, that they were always very much leavened with humor, because he felt, and I think rightly so, from a dramatic point of view and from the audience point of view, that it was very important to relieve the tension that was built in a horror film with humor along the way.
There was humor in White Zombie, a blend of horror and gothic romance made in 1932. Not all of it intentional. However, in this film, another method used to build tension was an especially effective music track.
What is it? I see death.
my wife.
Produced 1 year after Dracula, White Zombie clearly showed the influence of the earlier film. Once again, Bela Lugosi played the arch-villain, the harbinger of doom.
Who are you? And what are they? For you, my friend, they are the angels of death.
Not surprisingly, the leading man was inadequate. The heroine, helpless.
It was 1932, and James Whale had just finished Frankenstein, which was an enormous success, with Boris Karloff, who was the star of The Old Dark House 2. We had Charles Laughton in his first American film. We had Raymond Massey. We had Melvyn Douglas. And I was very impressed. Boris was as charming and gentle a person off-screen as he was horrendous and threatening on-screen. There was a great deal of thunder going and lightning and rain coming in and cobwebs and doors creaking. As a leading lady, it was my job to be very, very frightened. So Mr. Whale put me into a pale silk velvet bias-cut evening dress, very décolleté, and I asked him why, and he said, because when Boris is chasing you through the corridors, I want you to be like a flame going through the house and be very threatened, and that was my role, to be very threatened, very frightened, and to scream a lot. You know, actually, I think that putting me in pale pink silk velvet added to the feeling of fragility and helplessness that actresses needed in horror films, because if the beautiful young actress or lady is not threatened, there's no horror.
The horror film playing at the neighborhood movie house became like a visit of dearly valued old friends. How audiences loved those actors they had learned to hate. High on their special enemy list was Lionel Atwill. His most frequent victim, Fay Wray. A 1933 film, The Vampire Bat.
You're the one. What mad thing are you doing?
Mad? The one who has solved the secret of life to be considered mad? Life, created in the laboratory. No mere crystalline growth, but tissue. Living, growing tissue. Life that moves, pulsates, and demands food for its continued growth. You shudder in horror. So did I the first time.
No one expressed the lunatic logic of the mad scientists better than Lionel Atwill.
I have lifted the veil. I have created life. Wrested the secret of life from life. Now you stand for the lives of those who have gone before. I have created life.
Fay Wray was every fan's ideal of a beautiful, threatened heroine.
For tonight, Carl's name will be added to yours. And all of those whom this achievement will immortalize. It's late now, dear.
It's like a horrible...
When would leading men stop being so wrong?
Now, it's all right. Don't worry. I'm going to stay right here with you.
Surely Fay Wray never had better reason to utter her famous scream than in the classic horror film of 1933, King Kong. But audiences everywhere understood. Love was what the monster gorilla really felt for the beauteous Fay.
Makeup alone doesn't make the best monster. The best monster is one whom we, as members of the audience, can recognize through the makeup as having some of the qualities that are buried within ourselves. All of us got some kind of vicarious pleasure, I'm sure, out of watching King Kong go on a rampage and tear down the very symbols of New York City that represented wealth and power and prestige which most of us were denied. Because most of us were very poor during the Depression. We paid a dime, or 15 cents, or 25 cents tops to see King Kong and the other monsters. Those of us who were adolescents got the same kind of satisfaction and gratification out of watching Frankenstein's monster, because he, in a way, was a very symbol of adolescence. Lumbering, inarticulate, ugly, unwanted in a society where age was deemed superior to youth. It's hard to believe that it's turned around, but it has.
There we have the thoughts of Robert Bloch, one of horror's greatest authors, the man who gave us the classic novel Psycho, on which the Hitchcock film was based. And when we return, horror takes a turn toward the humorous, the big bugs come marching onto the screen, and the teenagers become king.
From ancient Genesis to the modern screen, is the name written in blood. Ega!
If I could just call you on the phone. The code of the ghost at the sign of the toad. Nobody lives on the Brownsville Road.
Thrill to the newest recording star, Archibald Jr.
Oh, they're screaming this way.
See ravishing Marilyn Manning in a thrilling, chilling story. The last of the prehistoric giants sees his first girl.
Noah.
Curious newsmen search deep in giant country for the last of the ancient cavemen. See a tough giant tamed by the soft hands of his captive woman. See him sacrifice his ageless beard for her love. They lose her to a boy in a dune buggy, escaping a burning desert. Ega's primitive passion was love or kill. Hear Ega talk, the ancient language of love, used at the beginning of time. See Ega!
By the end of the 30s, the old monsters were beginning to lose their impact. We now found humor in the master of horror himself, Bela Lugosi. We knew the truth even if the Ritz brothers didn't. The gorilla had a zipper down his back. Other films followed. They revealed that the old sinister characters and situations had been made laughable by the real horror of a very real war. Werewolves, vampires, and mad scientists continued to populate B-movies in the 40s, but increasingly they had become old hat.
I worked in the news. I was almost insane with joy.
To attract additional and more sophisticated audiences, a new kind of horror film began to appear. It was in 1944 that Bluebeard was released.
Searching everywhere. At last I traced her through the doctor I'd called in for her. He gave me her address. I went there. Outside her door I heard laughter. But what laughter? It was then I really saw her. She invited me in. She wasn't the same Jennifer.
loathsome creature. She offered me money. I suppose she thought she could repay me with money. Suddenly the sight of that Jeanette did something to me. Something indescribably infuriating. I thought they would stop her defiling the image I created of her. Stop her degrading my work.
Bluebeard hangs in my memory, not only because I was the star of it, but because it had a depth of characterization, which in that period in Hollywood was not often seen on the screen.
Because when they became Jeanette, I could take out my fury on them. I couldn't kill wood.
In the early days of Hollywood, pictures were in black and white. Black and white in more than one way, not only in the character of the film material, but in the plot lines. Everything was either black or white. There were no grays. The villains were just steeped in villainy, and the heroes were just too good to be true. Hollywood grew, and now we have human characters on the screen that have shades of evil and shades of good, and there are grays. It took a while for Hollywood to learn this.
The titles of the films produced by Val Lewton in the early 40s seemed to promise a traditional form of horror. But instead of tales of man-made monsters, vampires, and werewolves, Lewton's films explored the quality of fear itself, the unseen, the dark, the superstitions of the ages, the hidden recesses of the human psyche. These were his subjects. The power of his films derived from what they implied, rather than what they showed. A monster in a Lewton film could otherwise be quite an engaging fellow. A scene from The Body Snatcher, directed by Robert Wise, with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi.
What did they do? 18 people they killed and sold the bodies to Dr. Knox. 10 pounds for a large, 8 for a small. That's good business, Joseph.
Where did they get the people?
That was Hare's End. Oh, you should have seen him on the streets. When he saw some old beldame deep in drink, how he cozened her. Good day to you, Madam Tosspot. And would you like a little glass of something before you take your rest? Come with me to my house, and you shall be my guest. You shall have ports to drink if you like. How he cozened them.
They can do that. But when you get him there,
then what? Nor did they handle axe or knife to take away their victim's life. No sooner done than in the chest they crammed their lately welcome guest.
I don't understand the song. Tell me plain how they did it.
I'll show you how they did it, Joseph. I'll show you how they burnt them. No! Put your hand down. How can I show you, man? This is how they did it, Joseph.
The A-bomb had fallen. Audiences, conditioned by years of movies, knew the consequences of science unleashed. Here was the spawn, monsters wreaking havoc. From Japan came horror films featuring Godzilla, raging, huge, and pitiless, not to be distracted by any fey ray. Released from a deep freeze by atomic blasts, he was intent only on his deadly mission. And from a menacing outer space came the implacable Ghidra. The 50s were a time of suspicion. As one movie solemnly warned, watch the skies. There were enemies out there. There were enemies everywhere. Mutants resulting from nuclear radiation out to kill. Weird monsters from other planets out to destroy. Horror and science fiction merged in films that reflected the daily headlines warning of conspiracies within and imminent attack from without. But monsters were not always easily recognized. In the 1956 invasion of the Body Snatchers, they took on the familiar forms of your next-door neighbor. At the same time, the monsters in some horror films were becoming more personally connected with an important new audience. One of the first and most successful of these films, I Was a Teenage Werewolf, starring Michael Landon in his first feature film.
I first started making horror films was because I made a film called Crime of Passion, starring Barbara Stanwyck, Sterling Hayden, Raymond Burr. We got great reviews, and the picture opened up and died, and I want to know what happened. So I toured the country. I got out of Hollywood, and I saw what happened and what was happening. And that was the teenagers that were buying the records. It was the teenagers that were leaving the house, getting away from that TV box in the living room. The teenagers wanted to get away from the home. They wanted to get away from their parents. And they went to the cinema, they went to the theater, and they had fun with a horror picture because in my horror films, whether it was I was a teenage werewolf, I was a teenage Frankenstein, Blood of Dracula, the teenager they were always against the culprit that was the adult. And that's what the kids felt. And that's why they really had a good time. And they had fun with my pictures.
Take the girl to my quarters.
Janet's car? Yeah. There's not a trace of it.
Let me loose. Do you hear me? You will be soon as big as a giant. Or, like all the others, dead.
As we return to the horror of it all, the 1950s turn our nightmares from black and white to color, and we see exactly why Dana Andrews said Prunes gave him the runes.
The lines of demarcation were gradually being drawn between those who wanted their horror straight and those who preferred it to be suggested. A film that brought the issue home, the 1958 production Curse of the Demon, directed by Jacques Tourneur and starring Dana Andrews.
Yes, these are his too. Well, you want your hat and coat, don't you, sir?
My coat? Oh, yes, very forgetful of me. Thank you very much. You passed them. You slipped them in my pocket.
It's 2 minutes of 10. Come on.
We had completed the picture over in England and had returned quite satisfied with the work we had done. And much to our chagrin, when we saw the picture, the producer had put into the picture a mechanical device which had been concocted by the special effects English people and made a real demon which you could see walking through the forest. Which was a tremendous shock to all of us because the Oliver Onion's story had ended with the remark, maybe it would be better not to know.
To know or not to know. In the 1960 Italian production distributed in the United States under the title Black Sunday, the director left no doubt. Horror was to be known. It was to be seen very graphic and up close. Of the horror film from earliest days. The dead are never totally dead. Fantasy and the supernatural, however, would always flourish. Now, with the added excitement of color. It came first from Hammer Films of England, Horror of Dracula, with England's great stars of horror, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Devotees of the Hammer Films could take heart. Dracula and Christopher Lee would always find a way to return.
For me, Hammer was the beginning of a cult, the beginning of a new era, a new beginning of horror pictures. Hammer, I think, came out of the fact that perhaps on television they couldn't show a lot of blood. They weren't allowed to show that. They weren't allowed to show a lot of sexuality. There was no nudity on television. So perhaps Hammer came out of that taboo. And so I think a new color came, blood came, and a new sexuality, a new sensuality. Of course, because there was nudity. But there was also a sensuality connected to the dark side. And that's something I think that connected with people. The dark side. We all have it. I've never been offered the role of a sweet person. I think it has to do with the fact that perhaps they saw the dark side of me. And I do fit the traditional pictures of the dark woman, the evil lady. I think that's why moviegoers go to see these films. They want to get in touch with that evil side.
In the United States, films that dealt with the dark side received a significant boost from the work of producer-director Roger Corman. Despite limited budgets, he made a series of compelling horror films based on stories by Edgar Allan Poe. They frequently starred such well-known masters of the macabre as Boris Karloff, Basil Rathbone, Peter Lorre. The Poe films helped reaffirm Vincent Price as the reigning prince of films of the dark. The most lavish and striking of these films was Mask of the Red Death.
I have tasted the beauties of terror.
Listen. The passing of time. The beating of a heart. The footstep of an assassin. Destiny. I beg you do not mourn for Juliana. We should celebrate. She has just married a friend of mine. Let the mass begin!
You might hold a little bit longer on the shot of his going under the table and then trim a little bit of the beginning of this shot here. I'd like to hold a little... Horror stories have been popular throughout all of history. I think there's a reason for that. The experiencing of horror through a motion picture or a story is a cathartic experience. Blend from the movement in the long shot to her coming in with the overshoulder shot. It's a way in which the person can work out and express certain problems within his unconscious mind. We all have had feelings of horror as a child. These feelings have generally been buried. They lay repressed or suppressed in the back of the mind. And when you go to see a horror film and you scream with the audience, you are easing some of the pressure. Now, at the same time, when you do scream, you will very often smile afterwards. Smile or laugh because you know to a certain extent you've been had by the filmmaker. You know that he has manipulated the tools of his craft in order to get the right emotion from you.
Coming to this theater soon, The Beast of Yucca Flats. Filmed on the burning hot sands by Yucca Flats. See terror, panic, murder. See the Cardoza and Francis production of The Beast of Yucca Flats. See a man turn killer. See a woman ravaged. See one of the most exciting movies ever made. See The Beast of Yucca Flats. A killer on the loose. Death sweeps across the desert. Panic. A bloodthirsty killer stalks a moonlit desert. See The Beast of Yucca Flats.
And now on to the conclusion of the horror of it all, as horror moves into the, well, more or less modern era. Modern as of 1983. And after that, a Halloween treat.
These are some of the new techniques we're working with here at New World. In our prosthetics department, we're capable of doing almost anything.
I'm not an android.
This guy's got a close-up tomorrow, so...
John Beekler is one of the best men in the business. I think he's the head of our department, and he's created the special effects, the prosthetics, for a number of our films.
Push it over, back to the left a little bit.
In each one of these things, what he's trying to do is to give the audience something to build upon from within themselves.
The brace is slipping. Yeah. Okay.
Try to mime I'm not an android with his mouth.
I'm not an android. I am a human being.
It'll work.
But it's essential to remember that special effects are never an end unto themselves. Special effects are a means to lead the audience into a fuller understanding and appreciation of the film. The goal is not to dazzle the audience with the special effects, although it's nice if you can do that. The goal is to reach the unconscious of the audience and to let them experience, through special effects, emotions and visual sensations on film that cannot be achieved in any other way. When I was doing the Poe films years ago, we had to leave much to the audience's imagination, and I don't think that was necessarily bad. The audience should participate in the film-going process.
The language of horror has been extended. Our most blood-curdling nightmares rendered 1,000 times over. Special effects have brought spectacular new ways of instilling terror. And yet, graphic realism is not new, nor is the debate that it stirs.
The tradition of the Grand Guignol theater, which goes back to the turn of the century and before in France, was always one of presenting gore on stage. I mean, showing it happen, people having their throats ripped open and having a hot burning iron placed on the side of their face or something like that, done with tremendous technical expertise. And this tradition, of course, has been carried over into the horror film.
The essence of enjoying a horror film is in the fact that you, as a spectator, are totally safe. You are secure. What's happening on the screen is not going to happen to you.
Some years ago, I wrote a novel called Psycho about a mass murderer. And Alfred Hitchcock made it into a film very effectively, without using overt violence, merely suggesting it on the screen. But times have certainly changed. In the last 20 years, we have nothing but explicit violence in the so-called spatter films today.
The real horror today is not horror films, which are a lot of fun. Teenagers and adults love them because we never get rid of our fears of the dark and fears of the night. The real horror is on the streets today, in every city, in every town. It's on our television news.
If you see a body lying in the street and you've seen it on film as a child and as a young person and as a young adult and as a mature person, it's not a great shock, and it should be.
In recent times, that I think that it has become so excessive, and then it becomes a kind of pornography of blood for its own sake, and of course that does become distasteful.
It's necessary to call the halt somewhere along the line, I feel, and return to the prime virtues of the horror film, the wonder and the fantasy and terror that it evokes.
You can hand somebody a glass of milk, and if the music is right and the setting is right, the audience will jump and scream in the theater.
That the very fact that you don't know is what makes it fearful and makes it mystifying and shocking and can scare the devil out of you.
Our enjoyment of terror derives mainly from movies. But like children at Halloween, we are forever tempted to get up close, to be surrounded by what we most fear.
Fear? Why do people come in here to get scared? What do you do that's going to bring out that fear in the person? What you want to do is you want to put yourselves in the position of what scene you're doing. You are Lizzie Borden. You killed your mother, Jack the Ripper. He killed all these women. Whether you're the Wolfman, whether you're Dracula, whether you're a butcher, or
to scare, to be scared, we are able to take either role, for we have all at one time or another had to deal with our own dark.
I was orphaned when I was 3 years old. My father died, and I was sent to an Episcopal orphanage in Peekskill, New York, run by the Episcopal Sisters of St. Mary. They were very sensible women. Lights went out when it was time to go to sleep, and they stayed out until the morning. So I never learned to be afraid of the dark.
My mother told me that I used to have a Halloween skeleton made out of paper in my room, and she was very amused because I loved that skeleton. It represented my fears. But she said that every night before I went to sleep, I would take that and put it outside my room and close the door so that I didn't have to have it with me in the dark.
I remember Mama saying every night, "Good night, children." My brother and I shared the same bedroom. "Good night, children. I'll leave the light on in the hall." And I must have equated that with dark not being good for me.
Dark and light, they exist together, they coexist, and they must be dealt into. The dark side must be.
And suddenly we heard these scratchy noises behind the glass. My grandmother went and opened the curtain, and there pressed against the glass was this frightening face of this young woman with her nose flattened against the glass, her teeth scowling, and her nails going like this on the glass. Well, we're absolutely petrified with fear. I'll never forget how frightening that was. So my grandmother said, "Don't be afraid." And she opened the door, and I could see her as if it happened yesterday. She stood there, and she made this gesture to the girl, opened her embrace. And the girl, the insane girl, came right up to her, and she embraced her, and the girl put her head against my grandmother's shoulder. You see, she said, "You must learn one thing, and that is that if you fill your heart with love, there will be no room left in it for fear."
Through the years, the attitude of fans of the old classic horror films has been one of love.
What you see now on the walls is an approximation of my devotion to the horror films of the 30s. These particular frames always remind me of the old theaters where people could go in and lose themselves into another world where people can live for 500 years on human blood, where fantasy reigns supreme. These ghoulies and ghosties, creatures that go bump in the night, the things that make you as a child whistle past the graveyard, these flickering images of cinema, thanks to Karloff, Lugosi, Chaney, Fay Wray in the clutches of King Kong, all the memories of our childhood, of the horror film, of vampires, these things are never going to die, because in the horror film, they are truly deathless, and so are we all.
We have all passed this way before, shivered at these gargoyles and phantoms honed out of our common fears. And yet we go on in a perverse delight to confront what may lie ahead in the dark.
In every horror film, there is a door, and behind that door lurks that which we fear the most. That which we fear in real life, something that lurks behind the closed door in our own mind. It's often the fear of death, the fear of pain. And yet that door must be opened. We must confront our own mortality, our own feeling of inadequacy. And in the best horror films, that door is opened for us. We glimpse the horror, are able to confront it, and walk away with the feeling that from then on we could live with the fear of death or the fear of suffering. We can understand it a little better, and in so doing, understand our own souls.
We have all learned the language of horror. We have shared it, just as we share the nightmares of the child that remains within us all.
I love documentaries like this, looking back on the history and the tradition of horror film. It may wane from time to time, but horror will never die. After this, a televisual Halloween treat. Do you love horror, science fiction, B-movies, horror hosts, old-time radio, just plain spooky stuff? Then you should sign up at patreon.com/Lord Blood-Rah. You'll be supporting the production of Lord Blood-Rah's Nerve-Wrackin Theater, presenting the best, worst, and wildest horror films ever made. Lord Blood-Rah's Nerve-Wrackin Auditorium, featuring the best of old-time radio horror. Captain Paxar's Star Cadet Hour, showing classic 1950s sci-fi shows for Star Cadets of all ages. Plus, you'll get exclusive access to bonus content like Behind the Curtains of the Nerve-Wrackin Auditorium, a deep dive into radio horror. Lord Blood-Rah's B-movie reviews, a look at a classic low-budget drive-in feature, and much more. Sign up today at patreon.com/Lord Blood-Rah for the love of horror.
That it could happen in America. That it could happen now.
that it could ever happen to me.
Another murder tonight. At Watergate. My apartment.
You must issue the order that he be taken alive.
The moon hasn't risen yet. Put a guard on me.
And now, my lords and ladies, for your Halloween enjoyment, I present to you an episode of one of the best horror anthology series ever made, and a very rare one as well. Running concurrently with the classic series The Twilight Zone in the late 50s and early 60s was this great series, hosted by the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Roald Dahl's Way Out. Here from that classic series is the tale, Death Wish.
And now, our host, Roald Dahl.
How are you? We have an idyllic little story tonight for your entertainment. It has to do with an undertaker and his friends. Now, I've often wondered, haven't you, what sort of a man the average undertaker really is. Is he a gentle, sensitive, generous person, the one that charges madly because he cannot bear to profit from misfortune? Or is he a rapacious and sinister individual who reads the obituary columns in bed at night and broods all day upon the price of caskets? One doesn't know. And none of us are in any hurry to find out either, because we all figure, quite rightly, that we're bound to meet up with him in the end, just once, anyway. But funnily enough, I did find myself the other day being introduced to one of these gentlemen in someone's house, and as I shook hands with him, I saw his gaze traveling slowly down my body, from head to toe, and then back again, his eye measuring my exact length to the nearest inch. Apparently it was just a habit, but it shook me rigid. Our play is called The Death Wish by Irving Gaynor Nyman, who wrote it originally as a thesis for his PhD, his doctorate of embalming. And you may be quite sure that it's way out.
Most men want to kill their wives. George Atterbury had wished his wife dead for some long time, but wishing had not made it so. The wish began to father the deed on a Friday, appropriately enough, at a funeral.
Do you know what this reminds me of, George?
Oh, now, honey.
It reminds me of a TV show. You know the one I mean. What's the name of it again?
Everything reminds you of a TV show.
Well, that's because they're so true to life. Don't you think that's the reason, George? Because they're so true to life. TV shows, I mean. What's the name of that show? You know the one I mean.
Hazel, we're here to mourn poor Oscar's death.
I know that, but it isn't as if he was a close friend of yours. I mean, it's just some fellow who worked at the office with you. That's it! The name of the TV show. Death is a certified public accountant.
Hazel?
You remember it now? How this girl is going up to see the body, and she lets out the scream because it isn't her cousin from Tuscaloosa like everybody said, but a total stranger. The body, I mean. Boy, I thought that was a howl. Didn't you? Or maybe you didn't see it.
No, I didn't see it.
George, you miss all the best ones. This one had what's-his-name in it. No, that's Oscar, all right. Come along, George. George. Comes up to look at all the people he's killed. Boot Hill. That's what it reminded me of this afternoon out there at that cemetery. Although I must say that they had much nicer grass where Oscar went. Nicer than Boot Hill, I mean. George, what's the name of that sheriff? You know who I mean. Oh, George. George. Oh, I know his name as well as I know my own.
Sledgehammer?
No. He's the one who plays the part of that detective the girls are all so crazy about. Hey, George, look. Isn't that your favorite commercial? It is mine. You know, I think some of them are just silly. The commercials, I mean. But I do enjoy this one. George, look, quick. See? The boy is just getting ready to kiss the girl, and she just disappears. I think it's because she doesn't eat the right kind of cereal or some such thing, but I think it's so clever the way they do that. I mean, the way they just make her disappear like that.
Awfully clever.
I think so, too. Just bingo and she's gone. Just bingo and she just disappears.
Bingo.
You didn't think of his name yet, did you?
Who?
The sheriff. You know who I mean. He's one of my favorites. Isn't he yours? I mean, I just think that's the best TV show there is, don't you? Because it's so adult. Don't you think so? Oh, I'll bet it's one of your favorites, too.
Would you really like to know my favorite?
I'll bet it's that talking cat. I think that's the howl.
No, my favorite is the one where the husband kills his wife simply because he can't stand listening to her anymore.
Oh, really? I didn't like that one at all. And you know why? Because it wasn't convincing. Listen, for a TV show to be really good, you've got to believe it could really happen in real life, don't you think so? Like the American Western shows, which after all are nothing more or less than American history. And you can't go more authentic. Where are you going, George?
I just thought I'd take a little walk.
Right now? Well, if you go right now, you're going to miss that show. You know the one I mean. Where they're all gangsters except the hero, who seems to be a gangster like the rest of them, only you know he isn't. It's very authentic. George! Well, it's based on official files.
It was on that Friday that George Atterbury made the decision to kill his wife. But having made the decision, he found that it was only the first of several that he would have to make. There was the question of method. There was no shortage of implements when it came to that. Any one of them would do. It was just a matter of making a decision. There was one problem, however, that was not so easily solved. Having done her in, and this he was fully determined to do, what do you do with the body?
suppose there were no reports about this thing until 1946. What could have happened then to start the stories?
1946, well, the bikini underwater experiments were set off then. Maybe that started something.
Deep down in the strange, lurid, murky depths of the Pacific are fantastic, horribly grotesque creatures of the sea that challenge man's courage as no earthly creatures can. Science knows some of the answers, but not all. And among science's unknowns is the strange identity of the living monster from the ocean floor.
How'd he get out of suit? No man gets through that.
And what happened to him?
Here is the first undersea battle ever photographed between a giant killer shark and a woman as she searches for a monster even more deadly.
Could absorb a man.
Or a woman. Bonnie, cast off on the double.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can I help you?
Well, no, not really. I was just curious. That sign in your window.
Yes?
It does say, "Let us dispose of the body," doesn't it?
Yes, that is our business.
Yes, I suppose so, but that's rather an odd way of putting it, isn't it?
I wouldn't say so.
Oh? Oh, well, thanks. Thanks anyway.
Mr. Atterbury, you sure we can't help you?
How do you know my name?
Now, you were here earlier in the day, weren't you?
Well, yes.
It always pays to plan ahead. We never know when someone near and dear to us may be taken.
You know, that's right. It doesn't pay to wait till the last minute. And, you're an expert, aren't you?
Yes.
I mean that you're an expert in disposing of bodies. I mean burying people. I suppose there are a lot of things that you would have to know.
If you'll step this way, I think you'll be impressed with our selection.
Well, I'm just curious, mind you. Don't suppose anybody ever just walked in here with a body and asked you to dispose of it, did they?
That's our latest model. Look it over, check the quality points. The lining is all satin, and the cushion, plump the cushion. It's foam rubber.
It would be simple for you, wouldn't it? I mean, you're equipped for the job. No one would ever question one body, more or less, would they?
Nobody ever has. Whom did you have in mind?
Nobody. Nobody in particular. Just a matter of general interest.
Now, that casket has been particularly popular with our clients this year, and I could show you a much wider selection in our catalog.
Well, no thanks. I'm just looking.
No obligation. Except, of course, the universal obligation.
What's that?
To die.
Oh, yes. There is that, isn't there? Well, I'd better be running along. Sorry to have wasted your time.
Not at all. We've just begun.
Well, it's a nice place you've got here. Good night. Say, isn't it unusual for a place of this sort to be open nights?
I think you'll find we're an unusual mortuary, Mr. Atterbury. But then, once I knew you were coming, I had to wait for you, didn't I?
That's very nice. You knew I was coming.
We don't solicit business. People die every day. It's not necessary to go out and look for clients. But I do think we can help you.
I didn't know I was coming myself.
Now, if it's a question of price, Mr. Atterbury, don't disturb yourself. Life is held so cheaply these days, we don't feel that death should be made more costly.
Now, look, Mr.
Petard.
Look, Mr. Petard, if you were waiting for me, you were waiting for the wrong man.
I don't think so. It's George, isn't it? Wife's name Hazel?
Well, yeah.
And you did nod to me this afternoon, now didn't you?
Oh, that? Well, no. As a matter of fact, you nodded to me.
I don't see what difference that makes.
I'm not sure I follow you.
We were discussing price. Let me get my current price list. Now, Mr. Atterbury, I strongly recommend our complete service, but if cost is of a paramount importance, there is, of course, our do-it-yourself kit.
Your what?
Our do-it-yourself kit. I recommend it just as a possible alternative.
I never heard of such a thing. What do you think you're kidding?
Mr. Atterbury, I'm perfectly serious. I've never felt that, well, kidding, as you call it, is quite the thing in our profession.
You mean a person could just bury the corpse, the deceased, all by himself?
Naturally, with the proper equipment. The kit contains everything that you would need. A plain pine box is included in the package price, and the unit stores easily in your basement until needed.
I never heard of such a thing.
Well, to tell you the truth, I've always had a little prejudice against it myself. It seems sort of, well, surreptitious.
You just take them out, dig a hole, and bury them?
Exactly.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You just can't bury somebody all by yourself. It's illegal.
Now, Mr. Atterbury. Of course it's illegal, but then, so is murder.
Murder?
You are planning to murder your wife, aren't you? Hazel, isn't it? Of course you are. And I think you've come to the right place.
I'm Rod Serling, your guide to the land of the different, the bizarre, the unexplainable. That shadowy tip of reality. You reach it through any road you like. The only limits are those of the mind itself. When you enter the wondrous world of imagination. Next stop?
Where am I? How did I get here? What is this place?
Each of us has a counterpart in this world. And sometimes through something unexplainable.
Next stop, the Twilight Zone. The first and last stop on your journey into the imagination. Friday nights on most of these stations.
Hello? Who? Where are you, George? You're missing the most wonderful show on the TV. It's all about this... What?
A surprise. I'm preparing a surprise for you, and I may be a little late. Hazel, did you hear me?
I said you called at a very inconvenient time, dear. Right in the middle of this TV show. You know, the one with the tall girl who sometimes played a part in that other show. Where'd you say you were, George?
I didn't say. That's part of the surprise. I said that's part of the surprise, and would you turn that thing down a minute so you can hear me?
I hear you perfectly well, George, but it's very hard for a person to think of two things at once. So you'll be home soon, dear? That's good. You wouldn't want to miss the Invincibles, would you? Or is that on Mondays?
All right, dear, just as long as you're not worried about me. Oh, you're not, huh? Then maybe you ought to be.
You interrupted a television program she's especially fond of, I gather.
She's especially fond of them all.
Yes, I know. This way, please.
How do you know?
Know what?
About Hazel and her everlasting TV.
That's the cause of your unhappiness with her.
Well, I suppose that's behind it. But that still doesn't say how you happen to know so much about us.
We make it our business to know. Through here, please. Now, this is our workroom, where we like to handle special cases, like your own.
I've got a bad feeling about this. Now back to Death Wish from Roald Dahl's Way Out, and I've still got a bad feeling about this.
It's cold in here.
Cold as death?
If you want to put it that way.
I see you're wondering about our special services.
I'm wondering about a lot of things. This certainly isn't a very ordinary funeral parlor.
No, it isn't. But then how would you know? Most people aren't interested in our profession until the moment comes to summon us. But then most people aren't interested in death. You are, though, aren't you, Mr. Atterbury?
Yes, we've established that. So I'm trusting to your discretion.
Secrets are perfectly safe here, aren't they, Caron? Caron, my assistant. Now then, Mr. Atterbury, you're interested in our complete service.
If I understand it.
Yes. In the complete service, we handle the death from the beginning to the end.
You know, I'm going along with you. But I find this whole thing hard to believe.
Well, our complete service isn't widely known, but it's hardly unique with us. It's a natural outgrowth of our work, well, which by its very nature is anticlimactic.
Anticlimactic?
It's all over by the time they send for us. I suppose it arises out of a sort of a professional jealousy. So many other professions are so much more directly involved. Well, they've done it, you see, and our work is reduced to a rather morbid, meaningless tidying up. How tall is your wife?
Hazel? I don't know. She comes to about, I guess about here on me.
Here on. We find it most satisfying to do the complete job. Well, most creative, if I may be permitted a small paradox. Of course, there are little frustrations, but, I suppose you've heard the old joke about how doctors bury their mistakes. Well, we funeral directors bury our triumphs.
What's he doing?
Just getting the size.
Why is he measuring me?
Well, you did say that your wife came to here, didn't you? Thank you, Caron. I think it would be best, Mr. Atterbury, if you leave the details to us. Now, just a couple of questions. The motive. You and your wife were unhappy together.
What business is that of yours?
Oh, come on now, Mr. Atterbury. We're not butchers. We like to feel that our work is directed to some constructive purpose.
Oh. Well, I don't know about her. I suppose in all fairness, she might find it hard listening to me all the time, but the opportunity never comes up. I'm certainly unhappy.
Careful, careful. That's Mrs. Harrison. And if I may say so, I beg your pardon, a splendid example. Isn't she lovely?
Yes.
There's no need to be so frightened. She's quite dead.
I assumed as much.
She looks fine.
Yes. Very natural.
Not really. She was most unhappy in life, dissatisfied with her husband in every respect. It was nag, 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 day and night. As a matter of fact, she was especially fond of the television, too.
You mean you did this? She's a complete service?
Well, I'd hardly be showing you a body just out of morbid interest. Yes, this is one of ours. Oh, Caron, you might select a suitable casket while we're signing the papers.
What papers?
Oh, just the necessary authorizations. It keeps everything legal.
Oh. All right. You mean to say her husband just dropped in one day the way I did?
Sign right here. Right here, please. Here we are. Right here. Oh, they're quite in order. Line C. Line C. There we are. You look a little bit shaken, Mr. Atterbury. Why don't you try this? Here we are. Take this. That's fine. Yes. Ah, Caron. Look, isn't it a beauty? I don't suppose you'd care to try it on just for size?
Try it on?
No, I suppose not. Most people are quite squeamish. Mrs. Harrison refused absolutely.
Why should I try it on?
Her words exactly. Poor unhappy woman. You know, when she came in here, she was absolutely convinced that the only solution to her problem was to kill her husband.
I'm not sure I follow you.
She only thought she wanted to kill her husband, but it goes much deeper than that. It's what the psychologists call the death wish. She was the unhappy one. She wanted to die.
You mean she came in here?
Seeking information just as you did. But she would have been caught. This is no work for amateurs, even with our kit.
Oh. Yeah, I feel kind of funny. What was in that drink?
She was the one with the death wish, you see. And it seemed foolish to have two deaths to accomplish one.
Wait a minute. Let me see those papers.
Just the necessary authorizations for your casket and burial. Oh, I arbitrarily put down a hearse and 5 cars. Will that be sufficient, do you think? I don't imagine you have many friends.
You're out of your mind.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
You're out of your mind. Getting out of here.
It's a bit late for that, Mr. Atterbury. If you really feel that it's wrong of us to do this on principle, I'm sorry. But I honestly can't see why. After all, you were quite willing to kill your wife, now weren't you? Oh, come, Mr. Atterbury. You're robbing the occasion of its dignity. And dignity, after all, is the sine qua non of our profession. We're not used to forcing our services on people.
You know, you're out of your mind.
It's no use, Mr. Atterbury. No use at all.
About this TV show I thought was so good. I don't know if you saw it. Where this girl is going up to see the body. Just like we're doing. And she lets out this scream because it isn't her cousin from Tuscaloosa like everybody said, but a total stranger. The body, I mean. I thought it was a howl, didn't you? Or maybe you didn't see it. That's George, all right.
I don't think anyone would dispute the fact that the funeral parlor is a peculiarly American institution. There's nothing quite like it anywhere else in the world, I'm quite sure of that. And where my family comes from, far up in the north of Norway, they simply wouldn't believe that such things could go on. You see, up there, it's terrifically cold the whole time, and everything's frozen solid all the year round. So when somebody pops off, they simply sharpen his legs and hammer him into the ground like an enormous nail. We'll have another one for you next week at the same time. Good night and sleep well.
Start fresh with L&M. Stay fresh with L&M. Unlock a whole new world of fresh smoke and pleasure. Start fresh, stay fresh with L&M.
With a touch of a light to an L&M, you unlock a whole new world of fresh smoking pleasure. Do away with dried out taste for good. The secret, Flavor Seal. L&M's special way of moisturizing tobacco to seal in natural tobacco freshness and flavor. L&M burns slower, smokes cooler. And L&M's modern miracle tip means the cleanest, freshest taste possible.
Unlock a whole new world of fresh smoke and pleasure. Start fresh, stay fresh with L&M.
Fresh tasting, best tasting L&M in pack or box.
Makeup created by Dick Smith. Hairstyles by Ernest Adler. This program was pre-recorded. Paul Tremaine speaking.
Well, my lords and ladies, I hope I've added a bit of spookiness to your spooky season, and it doesn't have to end here. I urge you all to go to lordbloodrah.com/auditorium, where you'll hear my latest chilling endeavor, Lord Blood-Rah's Nerve-Wrackin Auditorium, an audio show featuring the best of old-time radio horror. Well, my lords and ladies, I want to thank you all for watching, and I want to invite you all back again next week when we'll do whatever this is all over again. As always, I am Lord Blood-Rah saying Happy Halloween and Geek Out.